James, could you reach out to her, see what we got going?
Mr. Mayor, it's 5:34 p.m.
Yes, Councilman, I understand that, but we need a city clerk in order to have an official meeting here, so,
I got you.
all righty.
I was wondering.
We're just holding on for just a sec, and then
I got you.
we'll get going.
This is why we start at 5:30, right? To be prepared.
Well, it gives us enough time to get through everything.
Carrie's having trouble connecting. She's going to try something different. She should be on shortly.
Okay. Okay. All right. Hey, how you doing? Okay. Can you come up here to get us started? Okay, thanks. Appreciate it. All right, bye. Okay. All right.
Logging on 20 minutes early would be good, but I still can't get on.
I have I had to do the troubleshoot and go through there.
That's what I was doing. So we'll see.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the delay. I have the city clerk in the council chambers now at a safe distance. I'm going to call the study session for building department operations of August 17th, 2020 to order. At looks like it's 5:38. If everyone would please rise where you are for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag
To the flag
Of
of the United States of America
America,
and to the republic
to
for
the
which it
republic
stands,
for which it stands,
one nation under
one
God,
nation, under God,
Indivisible.
indivisible,
with liberty and justice
for all.
for all. Okay, very good. We'll have roll call, please.
Councilpersons Breeding.
I don't see her on the big screen here.
Higgins.
Here.
Kelsey.
Here.
Parkinson.
He's here, but for some reason we can't get him unmuted.
Okay. Councilwoman Ross. Councilman Salcido.
She's here but muted.
Salcido is here via Zoom.
And Mayor Carnes.
Here, did you call Kelsey? I'm sorry, I didn't.
I did.
Oh, all right. I just missed it. So we do have a quorum. We are good to go. Purpose of today's meeting is a study session on building department operations. Been working out the kinks in the building department going back to when the emergency manager first put the operations into a safe built and all the different things that have happened since that time. We're going to start off today with our city manager, Mr. Krizan. He was going to talk about his evaluation of options, and then going to turn it over to our department head for that, our person in charge of building department operations, Mr. Myers, and then after that, we will go to open discussion of council. So, Mr. Krizan?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everybody. Kind of touching on what you just mentioned, this all kind of stems back to the time right before and during the emergency manager, when in an effort to improve services, save costs, the emergency manager contracted with Safe Built to operate the city's building department. However, during Safe Built's time, many of the same issues remained And eventually, with little improvement in the services, the city contracted with McKenna in 2017. Some improvements were made over the last couple of years, but definitely during the time that Safe Built was in place and moving into McKenna, there was definitely improvement with the revenue coming into the building department. Obviously, some of this has been due to increased building activity and just some of the other changes in operations. But from over the last number of years, we've seen revenue grow from an average of about $755,000 to $1.2 million annually during this era of contract services. However, it doesn't mean that all things are rosy, and there still have been different issues with customer service over these years. There's been times where we've had staff who have had difficulty following city policy ordinances. But there's definitely been a lot of issues, kind of the difficulty of having a contractor providing some customer service. We've had issues due to our oversight into the contract and probably not specifically really forcing the issue and forcing contractors to adhere to different provisions within the contract. But kind of looking around, we've got to remember where we came from. And there were certain factors that led us to the emergency, the financial emergency that have gotten us to this point. Got to remember that the city went from being extremely solvent with a fund balance at about $4.5 million all the way to eventual state emergency management takeover. Over the past 5 years, we've certainly done a remarkable job rebuilding the city's finances up to a point where we've rebuilt that general fund balance back to about $4 million. However, the effects of that financial emergency linger. We still have staffing levels at an extremely low level. Our wages across the city have generally not kept pace with surrounding communities, making it very difficult to fill open positions. We've also had different financial conditions, and the current wage scale based on the various collective bargaining agreements makes it difficult to have any kind of leeway within the wage scale. However, we have to understand that a more immediate factor affecting our ability to provide services, affecting our ability to do a whole lot of what we really should be and want to be doing, has been the COVID-19 pandemic. This has certainly cast a shadow of doubt on revenue for the short term, potentially the long term, and has certainly made it difficult for us to plan a whole lot of different things. Over the next 6 to 12 months, we're definitely going to continue with this uncertainty. However, we should start seeing some kind of ability to be able to understand what's coming. Though with the spread of the disease continuing, and as we continue to open different sectors of the economy, there's a good chance we're going to have trouble, and we may need to have trouble hiring. We may need to have be a lot more flexible with employees, and this is going to affect not only our current workforce, but also bringing in people for the workforce. However, that doesn't change the fact that we are where we are. There's often complaints about the building department from a customer service side, from an efficiency side, and we do have a few options moving forward. But basically, they're stemming from two different schools of thought. One is, do we maintain the third-party contractor, and the other is, do we completely staff the building department in-house, eliminating the third-party contractor? So quickly, looking at these options, option one would be to eliminate the contractor and completely staff the building department in-house. In this scenario, we would need to completely staff the building department. We would be going through a pretty major hiring project. And obviously that would be the first major challenge, is going to be trying to fill those positions. As I said earlier, the city's wage scale is relatively low compared to other communities, and we don't have a lot of wiggle room based on the current collective bargaining agreements. The next challenge is going to be trying to train that staff. By removing the contractor, we would only have one staff member in place immediately, and that would be the current building official. That would leave one person to train an entirely new department and maintain the service levels for the city. Another risk is the financial risk that would come with this. Building department revenue is directly related to construction activity. As construction activity increases, so does building department revenue. Right now, we have some safeguards based on the contract in case there's any kind of dramatic decline in building department revenue. We pay a specific percentage of building department revenue to the contractor, so if revenue declines, so does our payment to the contractor. This was certainly evident during March and April when the governor's stay home, stay safe order came into play and construction activity basically stopped. So also did building department revenue. That was a huge benefit to us during that time. There obviously would be some benefits to this. Department being fully under city control, employees would be directly accountable to the city's chain of command, would not be responsible to an outside contractor. There would be a lot more city oversight into day-to-day activities. And the city employees are more likely than contractors to be heavily vested in the city, heavily vested in the success of the department. So that would definitely be a benefit. Another thing to take note in this option is that while it might not be extremely significant, an in-house building department would likely have a higher cost than going with the contractor. Current estimates show it about $50,000, about $47,000 higher to go in-house than it would be than our current budget is. So the other main option is to remain with the third party. This would obviously be the easiest thing to do from an operations side because we wouldn't be making any changes. However, the challenge is we have had the issues in the past with the contractors, and we don't know that that'll get better if we stay with them. But this could be because we haven't forced the issue. This could be because of a lack of ability on their part, and they are dealing as well with the global pandemic like we are. Second challenge to this is that the contractor may see that our additional requirements, us really pushing the issue on some of these contract things, is going to be much more costly, and they're going to request more funding. This would be something that would make it not as financially feasible to do. Another thing is that ultimately right now the staff are employed by McKenna. They hold their loyalty to their employer, not so much the city. But also McKenna has other communities they're working with, and they can move the staff around to other communities based on their need, based on what's going on. So we can still continue with this turnover we've been having issues with over the last number of years. But there are also benefits to this. One such benefit is the obvious one. The administration for doing it, for recruitment, selection, hiring, it's all on the contractor. There's no need for the city to go through a massive hiring project, which eventually might not come to fruition. Another benefit is that McKenna takes the higher financial risk than we do by staying contracted, because then when, as we saw, March and April, as building department revenue declines, so does our payment to the contractor. So those are the two major options. However, we could also take kind of a in the middle road approach, taking into account the current situation, the current pandemic, financial picture. We could take the next 6 months and evaluate. We could hit the brakes, allow for a 6-month period, and then we can look at the end of those 6 months. Do we want to retain the services of McKenna? Do we want to solicit proposals? Or do we want to move it in-house? Obviously, this would delay the decision, which has been bantered about on and off for a little while now. And also, we don't completely know what the landscape will look like in another 6 months, or even really a year. It could go a couple different ways. The city could be completely clear of COVID-19. This pandemic could be at the tail end, or in 6 months we could be in the middle of the second wave and everything is shutting down again. These are just kind of the realities we're facing now. Another big issue with doing this 6 months from now is that puts the calendar into February. February is getting to be the beginning of the building season. Trying to make a big change at that point could be disastrous for customer service, to make sure we get inspections done on time. But we could use those 6 months to try and improve services through McKenna, try and work with them to make sure they're meeting our expectations. And again, like I said, we should be able to properly assess the situation regarding the pandemic better in 6 months than we can now. We don't know if a shutdown's going to come. We don't know what's going to happen with school. The next 8 to 12 weeks is going to prove very difficult with current employees who have school-age children, trying to find ways to meet both family and professional obligations. So these options present a variety of ways that we can accomplish different goals for the building department. Terminating the contract would effectively create better city control, and if that's the goal, that would make sense. However, there's possibility we would have delayed implementation, trying to hire, trying to staff the department, trying to get things up and running. If we expect we're going to be up and running, say 90 days from now, we need to be ready to be disappointed, because it could be very difficult to be ready to go 90 days from now. Maintaining the contract with McKenna that is probably less likely to accomplish all of the goals we're trying to set out, because we still wouldn't have the exact city control that we desire. And it's risky that we'll be able to ever meet the expectations set out for McKenna. Likely we'll be stuck in kind of like the status quo. Delaying decision for 6 months allows us to try and improve, try and get McKenna to meet everybody's expectations, and also it can also give us a chance to really look at how we can bring it in-house if that is what's desired once we're through this pandemic. I think that's probably one of the better options we can use, is to not totally abandon the idea, but reevaluate in 6 months. Reevaluate the environment, reevaluate performance, and go from there. So with that, if you guys have any questions for me, or if you want to...
I just wanted to move on to John Myers first, and then we'll open it up for conversations after that. So, James, if you're finished, John, I'll move over to you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. He's covered most of it pretty clearly and concisely. We can review quickly a moment, and I just want to let everyone know, if you're not aware, that Mr. John Jackson, President of McKenna, is with us this evening, and you'll be able to address any questions directly to him as you choose to. When a couple of things have changed in the process of our working relationship with McKenna. When Matt Koppler moved on to another city, and we brought in a temporary John Zach, city manager, it was really the first time under administrative leadership I looked at or saw the contracts of all of our third parties involved, including Becker and Rader, Hennessy, and then McKenna. Once we did that, if you remember, in February, we had a review and a study session. We laid out a game plan with a flow chart and 3-point reasons for that flow chart and how it would work and how we'd like to build from an infrastructure inside the city hall over a long period of time for the health and well-being of the building department as it can be for the future of the city. Mr. Jackson reviewed it. We sat down. He agreed with that outline, and we, at that point, began to evaluate what changes they would make in McKenna to comply with that guideline we laid in front of the council then in February. And then, of course, we met the staff here in the office, and Mr. Jackson made it clear that we would make those kind of adjustments in the way we designed the layout of the program and the staffing, and then the pandemic hit. And so we've kind of got stalled into that structure. I did want to highlight that that was part of the changeover once Mr. Zach came, and everything else is history. You already know where my view's been and what my support is to the city, and it's a collective team effort, and that's where I'll leave it, and you guys can begin to ask questions as you please.
Okay, very good. As Mr. Myers mentioned, we do have John Jackson here from McKenna, the owner of McKenna. Also at the meeting is Chief Ray Waters of the Police Department. We have Lisa Griggs from Finance. We have Jennifer Richardson from HR. As we go into this, it's our determination, our duty to provide what is going to provide the best services to our citizens and to those who are utilizing the building department. Personally, I would like to see us head towards the having that more of our in-house situation that we've had before, and build people up, bring the inspectors up, and have them stay with us. But it's a difficult time with. It's not the department where you come in and start as a young man or young woman and then expect to stay your whole career there. Everybody moves more and more than they used to before. But anyway, we're opening up to building department operations. So whoever would like to begin.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I have been working on the building department since I got in office. I worked with Safe Built, and we got rid of them. And the emergency manager's orders were that we had to keep building company beyond this. And I've been working on trying to get it in-house. 2 years ago, I talked to John Myers. He said, yeah, we can do it in-house. At that time, he said we'd save about $250,000 a year. Matt Koppler said the same thing, that we'd save $250,000 a year. We have, if we do it now, we've got all winter to hire people in building departments. If we wait 6 months, it's going to be in the middle of the summertime, and you have to wait until November again. So I think getting out of this contract right now and rebuilding the city department is the best way to go. Thank you.
Okay, I have a question of Lisa before we, is that $250,000 figure accurate?
Keep the inspectors, but get rid of,
If Lisa could respond to that?
I think she's at.
Hear me?
Yep, yeah, we got you.
No, what James provided you in the package shows that it will cost us about $50,000 more than it's costing us currently. But I'm not sure where that $250,000 savings came from. I didn't provide that. I don't have that in my documents anywhere.
Could it be the increased amount of fees that would be coming into the city, or has that already been factored in?
That's been factored in. But, so we're talking just the expenditure side. It would be about $50,000 more. We have new vehicle costs that we have to put in there, equipment costs for the office, for the technology, and then all of the staff was factored in there based on what John Myers and the city manager felt we could pay the employees. So that's all been factored in there.
Okay, Councilman Parkinson, do you remember where the savings were, where we would recoup the
I don't remember
250?
at that time, but Lisa just said $50,000 figuring and factoring in the retool the department, buy vehicles and all that stuff, it's still gonna be $50,000 less. Well, that $50,000 will go away the next year because you're not gonna have to retool the department and buy new vehicles.
But the vehicles are an ongoing cost each year, so that's the cost that funds those vehicles based on the state of Michigan's schedules that are out there, includes fuel, all of those costs. That's not simply to purchase the vehicles, that's an ongoing cost every year. So the estimated cost is still going to be $50,000 plus any additional costs each year, over and above what we're paying now.
Where did John Myers get that figure? Because he told me that, and so did Matt Koppler. So let's go back to John Myers and ask him about that.
Okay, very good. Mr. Myers?
I can tell you where it came from, and it wasn't $250, it was actually $243,600. And the number came actually from an afternoon before we got to a study session or to a city council meeting about 4:35 in the afternoon. The city manager asked me to tell him what the number of staff we'd have to take, what it would take to house it in-house. And then he gave me by email a list of dollar amounts for each category. And as we surmise at this point, he took the bottom of our union scale instead of the top end of our union scale. I put those numbers together, submitted them back to him, and that's what he reported on that night. Whether he added or was even defining in that night, which I can't remember or define from the past, but he may not have added the number of other categories of responsibility that Lisa just described to you that are added to the budget. But in staffing it, he would have taken it, the numbers he gave me, which we now project would have been the lowest side of our union labor cost, and put those into the number of staffing we'd have. I do not believe that figure that I gave Matt and Matt gave you were the numbers of a complete budget for the entire building department operations.
John, have you seen the numbers that Ms. Greggs has provided as far as what the budget was, and do you feel that those are accurate representation of what the cost would be?
I do. Based on the lock-ins, and what we actually did was we took everything to the highest point and highest reference so that we'd have the highest category of concerns that we have based on our limitations with our union fee scale.
Okay. Do you believe that it's, well, I had my say earlier. I'll open it up to others. Mr. Councilman Parkinson, are you set now? Or is it, do you have?
I have one more question.
Yes, sir, go ahead.
The amount of the service that we have is pretty bad, and with the city employees, it'll be a whole lot better. So if it's $50,000 more and we get the better satisfaction and a better service from our city employees, then so be it, because I've been very dissatisfied with the contractor. Thank you very much.
Okay. Who else?
If I may, I'm sorry I was late to the meeting. Sometimes specialists kind of keep you a little longer than you think.
Okay.
One of my problems, one of the things that I wanted to say was I agree with the management that we should wait. I mean, we have an election coming up. We don't have any idea what our budget is going to be as far as how much money we're going to be in the red. But my main concern is that we have a problem hiring people. We have a problem getting people. So all of these different classifications, the deputy building official, administrative supervisors, and the commercial permit techs, who's to say that those people that are currently there will be willing to come in at our union scale, because we are a union shop. And so I think all of these things combined, the finances and our lack of being able to bring people in, we have problems getting firemen, policemen, mechanics. I just think that we need to take a pause and go with the management team and wait and see what happens at the beginning of the year. Wait and see how long this virus takes to help us go away. But that's my thought on the whole thing there. Thank you.
Your Honor, if
Thank
I
you,
may.
ma'am. Yes, ma'am, go ahead.
I happen to agree too with Council President Breeding, but I don't want us in these 6 months to stay stagnant. we still need to keep moving forward. So in these 6 months, can we do things like improve on the building department website, clean up and clear up the steps for the new businesses? Can we clarify and have better direction for projects that require permits? Can we improve on our forms? And then most importantly, can we implement Mr. Myers' new structure under McKenna still, that he wanted to do before COVID hit? These are, I think these things will help alleviate, if we choose in 6 months to go in-house, will alleviate that worse before it gets better scenario. I think that these things will just help us in the long run. And then I guess I want to know too, now that we're open 5 days a week, are we current? Are we fully staffed in the building department? And how far behind are we with our work there?
So that, Mr. Myers?
Far behind, I should ask.
There you go. Mr. Myers, can you comment on that or answer?
I can. In our rental property programming particularly, we're probably 2.5 weeks, touching 3 weeks in backlog. But clearly we're sitting at about 2 weeks behind. The high risk of getting past 2 weeks is that we have changed our city rental ordinance to a 90-day process. So once they pay for a registration and they get an application in, the clock for 90 days begins. And if we can't get to their initial for 3 weeks or 2.5 weeks, then we do run into the back wall of that 90-day limitations for the citizens in the city. So right now we're a little behind. The process kind of got stopped a little bit in July 6th as we've been reopening in a slow process, looking for numbers to match. And so we've been short-staffed a little bit. In somewhat of a fair credential to McKenna, the shift changed. To your one question, you're asking, if we pause at this time, can we be in more of a line with the goals of my proposed operations of the building department? And I would suggest this, and then Mr. Jackson can speak for his organization as a consultant. But I think what they've realigned in the middle of this season is looking for a code enforcer instead of just another building inspector, and then look for a rental inspector instead of just another licensed building inspector. So in finding that specialized category, they have not been able to give us a full staffing, and he can speak to any other reasons why they don't have a staffing to full complete load to this date. So I would turn it over to Mr. Jackson if you want to have him answer the same questions that you had addressed to the council.
If you think it would be helpful, sir?
Yes.
Oh, all right, Mr. Jackson, go ahead. Thanks for being here.
Mayor. Thank you, John, and council members for the opportunity. We're committed to continuing to make improvements in the building department, working closely with John. I think the city council is fortunate to have a manager in the building department like John with the vision for the future of the building department. We are behind his plan 100%. One of the key aspects of the plan is to bring new talent onto the team. We have the same permit technicians that we've had from the get-go that have been trained in customer service. So there's some stability and some continuity there, but we continually to look for opportunities to improve customer service with the permit techs. We want to reflect well on the city of Lincoln Park. That's our main objective. So we're willing to continue to work on that and train and that sort of thing with respect to the permit techs.
with respect to the inspectors, one of the key points of the mission or the direction of the department is to train people, bring them on, train them in terms of how we want to do work, we want the building department to work, and that takes time, okay? You can't bring new talent on and say that, well, I can only guarantee that you'll be here for 90 days. After 90 days or 6 months, I'm not sure what your future holds. So, you know, it's better if we can, you know, talk to the talent, recruit the talent with the idea that they would have a secure working environment and a secure future. The way we do that currently is we say, well, even if Lincoln Park decides in 6 months that they're going to go a different direction, we'll try to find work for you with McKenna. But it would be best, I would think, for McKenna and Lincoln Park to look at the long-term objectives and how we can best do it. But to answer the question, over the next 6 months, we will continue to work very closely with John, very closely with our permit techs and our inspectors to make sure we have the right people doing the right jobs and that we're fully staffed.
Okay.
Your Honor, if I may,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, go ahead.
Councilman Salcedo, so Mr. Jackson, are you fully staffed now? In the last year, have you been fully staffed? And can you elaborate on issues with customer service, please?
So in terms of being fully staffed, actually, we've been overstaffed through November of last year, based on the amount of permit activity, revenue, and so forth. So we were at a higher staffing level than necessary. And we started to look at the plan for the department, which was have a dedicated rental permit tech, a dedicated building permit tech, and a dedicated code enforcement commercial tech as well. And of course, when you add that kind of talent, it costs more, right? Because you don't have you don't have people that are cross-trained. You know, you're operating at a little less efficiency. But we saw it as an opportunity to achieve the department objective, which was to have people specialized in each of these areas. So up until November, we were overstaffed, working towards this goal that we discussed, that John discussed. So we kept a higher level of staffing there. Now, of course, we had the COVID situation, and basically we slowly are getting back up to the point where now we have 2.5 permit techs basically on staff, which is is exceeding the contract obligation, but again, getting closer to the department objectives of having one specialized in rental, one specialized in building, and one specialized in code and commercial. So we're getting back to that pretty closely. As far as the inspectors go, it's the same situation. Unfortunately, after COVID, we had a number of inspectors that were reluctant to go into houses. They were, they were basically being well compensated through unemployment and other incentives. So we're working hard to get back up to that staffing level where we were at before. But right now, I would say in another week or so we'll be at a place, a good place. And I would also add that we've been bringing new talent in to meet with John to make sure that there's a good fit. So again, we have a good working relationship with John. We want to make sure we have the right people to do the right jobs.
All right, thank you.
All right, we have Councilman Higgins has a question.
Yeah, I want to know, I also worry about if we could bring in the right people for the jobs, if we went right over and brought it in-house. I want to know if we could keep half with McKenna, bring half in like bring in our own clerks, but maybe keep the inspectors, because I worry about being able to get inspectors for what we're going to be willing to pay.
Something of a hybrid, do you mean?
Yes.
Well, I would imagine that, that when does our current contract expire, Mr. Jackson, or James? Can you help me out there?
It's an open-ended contract.
Open-ended, okay. So I'm sure that that's something that could be amended if if was the choice of council. What,
Oh, sorry.
no, so go ahead, sir.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know if you were done there. I apologize.
I didn't know either, so go ahead.
Well, I happen, besides yourself, Mayor, to be the longest-serving council person on the council. I think that won't be disputed. You and me have served on there. And to go through point by point, I appreciate James giving this scenario. But there's two sides to every scenario. And I happen to have a history that I lived it too. When Safe Built was here, that was mandated, and we all know how that went. I have a problem. Okay? But when Safe Built was here, myself and Councilman Parkinson and a few other people went up to the Mr. Copper when we hired him on numerous occasions complaining about Safe Built's performance. And Mr. Copper, I mean, unfortunately he's not here, and that's the bad part about talking about people, but if he was, I'd say the same thing to him. Mr. Copper kept hearing us whine and scream about Safe Built's inefficiencies, okay, or lack of, or whatever. And finally, he got some high-ranking people from out of state to come in because he was getting so much flack. He wanted to talk to them face to face. So they drove by, whatever it is, came in his office and talked to him. We got through that part, and then we decided to get rid of Safe Built. I, on Council 4, asked the attorney, which is Ed Zelnick, if we could sue Safe Built for not doing what they were doing. And Ed, very politely but very eloquent, told me, you have to complain not after you end the contract, but during the contract when they're not doing what they're doing, and do it then to make the point. I says, point, lesson learned. That's a good lesson. So the mayor, myself, and Mr. Copper, if you remember, Mayor, we sat down and interviewed McKenna. And we sat there, and I know specifically I did. We told him about all the problems we were having with Safe Built and all the issues, and we're a unique city, and we use that term, that we are not regular. Are you really sure that you're coming in here, you know what you're getting into? Do you really understand the process? And they assured us in that meeting, it was in the blue room right off the council chambers, they assured us they did, and the guy that was there, I forget his name, but he was at the beginning, he was like the manager that was kind of checking in every time. I think before we got Mr. Myers, I think, he was there. And anyways, Jackson was there. You can speak to that after I'm done if he wants to. But he was there, and he indicated, yes, we are in the business. Yes, we understand it. Yes, we know you're a unique situation. Yes, we know the problems you're having, Safe Built, and yes, we will be able to take that issue on and to continue. All right, so now let's fast forward, okay? We had some problems, okay? We had some problems when we put that's why Mr. Myers is here, the council remembers. We wanted somebody from our team to be in charge of the building department. Our employee. He could control and he had his loyalty to us. That's how it happened. That's how we got Mr. Myers. So we get Mr. Myers, and we continue to have problems, and of course John starts working through it. And then the conversation comes up over and over about Safe Built not doing this or Safe Built not doing that. John not knowing about the contract because the management team, and I use that because Matt was the head of the management team, never informed Mr. Myers of what the contract was, which is really surprising because Mr. Copper had staff meetings just like Mr. Krazan does every Tuesday, okay? And anyways, John we discussed this with John on a few things because I'm on the planning commission and Lillian's ways, and we start talking about things, and we find out that there's issues, and we kind of like try to find out why they're not being addressed. Mm-hmm. And John would tell us that he has talked to Mr. Copper about this. Unfortunately, Mr. Copper is not here. Anyways, where I'm going with this is there's no insight in the contract. There's no penalty in the contract for non-performance. Whoever wrote this contract did a great job, but I don't know why the city attorney, and he's not on until 7:30, why it wasn't reviewed by him to protect the city's interest in the contract. Normally, any contract I've ever seen is at an end date or restrictions or penalties in there for the party that you're contracting to. That's what we're doing. They're our vendor. We are the employer. We're not the other way around. We're not their vendor and they're the employer. And it seems like in this whole conversation that I've been aware of from the 6 years I've been in council, and Safefield hasn't been there till 2017, that we keep beating the same dead horse over and over. And in council, as Mr. Parkinson said, and John verified, we were given by the head management team person, Mr. Koppler, a figure of 200 and he said 250,000. John says 243. I'll admit to that. It's recorded. We can pull the recording up and we can play it back. So that's not a problem. Okay. We get advised that by, quote, the head of our management team telling us this is what we'll save if we bring it in-house. Okay. We weren't aware of the conversation that John had with Matt before that particular. Okay. We are the council, and I keep saying this, and I keep getting tired of beating this dead horse. We are the ones that make a decision on our management team, bringing the information to all our management team, our directors, our finance people, our personnel people, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And now you're asking me, as a councilman, who's been through this scenario from day one, to trust the management team that in 6 months, because of what you said here, that we're going to be able to do an improvement and be able to oversee more of the contractor. Why this wasn't done since 2017, and again, James, like I told you before in your office today, you weren't here. But you know what? I get hung with the same sword you get hung because I'm the councilman now. Okay? So I'm really disappointed, frustrated, and if anything I've said has been wrong, please call me out on it. I'll give up time to debate or answer the issue. But I get tired of the fact that we keep beating this horse. We have a contract that gives us no leverage. We have no control over the employees. If we have an employee that we got to go to McKenna and ask, beg, or whatever for them to do something. But we are the payer. We are the person who employs them and pays them every month. We have John in there who should be running that department. I mean, by the rules and regulations we have, not doing anything wrong, but run the department in our best interest. And if not, he should come to the management team, whether it's finance, HR, or the city manager, and report that. And the city manager should be coming to the council like twice a month he's supposed to, and telling us about that. Not us going around and finding out or talking to people in the hallways or getting residents to call us, and then we ask the questions online or now in the Zoom meeting. So where I'm going with this, I don't trust the management team at all. Okay, and I don't trust McKenna. I'm going to tell you right up front. I'm being quite blunt about it. The track record proves me to be right. They haven't done that. They've been asked about that. John's had the meeting where he did the game plan. Now it's COVID. Before it was the housing crisis. Before that, Matt Comfort, going back to Matt, God bless him, he was going to get the ordinance officers to work in the building department. There was a great plan for that. We were told as a council, hold on. Don't do that right now. I've got a game plan. I'm working with the police officers union or whatever, or the GPS union for the code enforcement. We're going to work things differently. We're going to do this, okay? Never materialized, okay? I am tired as a council person who's elected and takes an oath of office to do like we're all talking about here, and I'm sure we're all concerned about it, about doing what's good for the city and getting this kind of service from my management team. I'm sorry. You know, if you people wanted more money, you could come to me as a council, and we would discuss it and decide how to do it or not do it. But this bit about hiring, my God, we couldn't even hire a mechanic. So, you know, that's what I'm saying. We're talking, the HR needs some help. The finances, if we don't have them, we're never going to have them. Nothing's changed much in this city. And I'm not going any further because I think my time is up. But my point going is I don't have confidence in the management team. I don't have confidence in McKenna. And you're asking me to give everybody 6 more months to do the right thing. And Donna's right about one thing. We won't be here, or some of us will, some won't, or we'll all be here. But for 6 years, I've been trusting management team, different city managers, okay? Because that's what we do on council. And Mayor, I'm sorry if I took too much time. You should have, I apologize, and I give up my time, but I have said what I said, and I stand by it. Thank you.
Who is it that you're identifying as the management team? If we're that you don't.
The management team is the city manager, the financial officer, the department head, the HR person. They're all part of the management team. when we're doing this in-house, we're talking about HR. If they had a problem, we were trying to hire people.
Okay, I just wanted to get clarification of who you met. I would argue vehemently against what you said, because I have the utmost faith in our management team. The city manager coming in and just in the short time that he's been here has made great strides for us. And the HR and the finance have been doing a good job for us. Now, there's been issues with the building department. There's been step ahead and step back, but through all, I think they're giving a better service at this point now than they were 5 years ago. And I would even argue the point that prior to the emergency manager coming in the end of 13-14, when it was switched over, that they're doing a better job now than at the tail end when we were still in house. But those things all need to be discussed on that. So, for anybody else wish to be heard?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'll have to agree with Larry Kelsey. This is going back a long time, and the management team's not backing up the city council whatsoever. The city council wants to do things, we're not getting support we need out of the management team. So, if you don't like that, Your Honor, I'm sorry, but that's the way I feel, and that's the way Larry Kelsey feels. Thank you.
All right.
Through the chair, Your Honor, this is Councilman Salcedo.
Yes, sir, go ahead.
2 more questions, please.
Yes, sir, go
what are
ahead.
the job requirements for a building inspector? And is anything based on job performance and customer service? Like, if we have an outstanding inspector that's doing well, no complaints, maybe we should think of a bonus incentive for something like that, or maybe down in the future. So my 2 questions are, what are the requirements of a building inspector, and then what I just said?
Okay, we'll go for the first one. Mr. Myers, can you address that?
I can do it in a brief session. I can't give you the details. I have sent to HR a copy just recently of a job description, but a building inspector in this day and age is required to have construction experience behind them, upwards to 4 years of experience before they can consider applying to the state of Michigan for a Act 407 regulated license to be a building inspector. Once you're a building inspector by license, you can then apply for your plan review registration with the state. Until then, you can't touch a plan review. And then thirdly, once you've spent, I believe it is between 2,000, it used to be 4,000 hours of work as an inspector, you can then apply under recommendation for your license as a chief building officer official. So there's the state standards that are established, and also you can't get those recommendations until you have a company such as McKenna or a city municipal who is agreeing to hire you under your building code standards. So there's the primary structure. Once you do have your state license, according to Act 407, you then need to keep it under what they call CEUs, which is Continued Education Unit Credits. And you must comply with every 3 years, anywhere between 30 and upwards to 72. A building official needs 72 credit hours right now in the state every 3 years of continued education to keep his license active. So there's a broad scope of design. The developing program that we've talked about for the city to going forward over the years is to advance people into specialized areas of inspecting, such as they're inspectors of residential construction versus commercial construction. And they can now get International Code Council certifications to prove that they're qualified and tested to do so in specialized areas. You can also get the ICC qualifications in other fields such as plan review, building official, and permit techs as well. So there's many continued developing standards for pursuing new people into a long-term career that doesn't have a dead-end job.
I think the second part of the councilman's questions had to do with some type of a bonus or something of that.
The second part of his question is, if you're doing that on in-house, the contract would have to be set up with McKenna and the consulting with John Jackson to recognize awards or achievements. But right now, if I'm not mistaken, they have a W-2 on permit techs, and they have a contract with building inspectors. And so we would give them bonuses inside their contract without redesigning that contract differently. But if you went in-house, you certainly could give an incentive of packages of performance.
How is the job market for inspectors? Is there a glut of inspectors on the market, or are they hard to come by?
My recommendation at this point is you'll need to look for them and find them. But with the COVID, if you'd ever choose to go online presently, you will not find very many cities at this moment looking for inspectors. So in the state of Michigan, there aren't a lot compared to how many cities and how many inspectors are in the field. There's plenty. There's an aging process, and that's part of what we recommended here. There's a lot of people that are starting their building inspector's career into their 50s and 60s. The average electrical inspector, they tell me in the state of Michigan, is somewhere about 70 years old. So there's some aging process that's taking shape in the evolution of the state registered building inspectors. So they're probably there. You just have to make them, invite them, and find the neighborhood that they really need and would like to settle in.
Okay. Yeah, when you were talking about operations, building department operations, are there any current things that you would like to see developed, or changes that you would like to see happen?
We've been since February, once we saw their contract versus what we recommended to you. Again, I think there's a standard that will help long-term development. We've already talked about that in the flow chart. If there's a progression from a rental inspector all the way to a building official in the process of training and development, I can tell you in my own personal experience that being from a code enforcer to a rental inspector to a building inspector to a building official, there's a giant leap of voided information and training between just a regular inspector who goes home at the end of the day versus someone who now needs to be involved in the legal and the administrative pieces of operating a building department. I think we can create that. The other part is I think we can support the council's conviction of accountability by giving them a guideline that we think is quality control, and they can be evaluated. We've created that, or began to create the rest of it. That is not a day-to-day operations manual. That's a quality control of performance, of tracking what we're doing. That's been created for the building department as well. We've added another component that we have not engaged yet, and that is assuming that many of our inspectors may be new coming into the category. We've actually written a document that allows every type of inspection that we can think of that has a checklist, so the new inspector knows exactly what we're looking for, with two phrases: predictable and consistent. So we're doing those as well. We have talked about bringing aggressively what it would take to put a building official, a building inspector, as a code enforcer. Instead of using LP Pride for building code violations, but put it in-house, it allows someone to be much more aggressively aware of the IPMC code book as well as our city ordinances on building.
Okay, thank you. Was it Lillian that had a comment? Oh, go ahead.
Yes. If I could ask Mr. Myers, as you would know best, what inspections we do. I believe a long time ago we used to have part-time inspectors, if we were to go in-house, is that what you're looking for? Are we looking for full-time inspectors? Are we looking for part-time? Could we, and I guess the question is could we do part-time inspectors? And then, you said that the average age of an inspector is much older now. Wouldn't that work to our benefit?
Depends on how old I'm going to get. Okay. The answer to your question is yes, and we already do. So the answer is, can we do part-time inspectors? And the answer is yes. And whether we're working with the consultant or we're working in-house, we will take all trade inspectors as part-time. They will be contracted based on when we need them, not based on every day, a 5-day-a-week program. The rental inspector, no question, needs a full-time body. We'll need building inspectors, we'll need a full-time body. If we went in-house code enforcement, we'd need a full-time body. But our trades, electrical, mechanical, and plumbing, they could easily be contracted by 1 or 2 days, probably 2 days a week when needed. And so in other words, if we only have room for 3 electrical inspections in the day, they could be here in the morning and they could be gone until the next time. So yes, we would use both part-time and full, both for consultant or in-house.
Okay.
Larry, were you all set, man?
Well, yeah, I guess.
Hold on 1 second, sir. Go ahead,
If I
man.
could just follow up, if that's what we're going to do, both some part-time and full-time, that is obviously, that was in that financial numbers that we were given? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, Councilman Parkinson, go ahead.
Yeah, John, we've been talking about this for a long time. Have you put any feelers out about building inspectors, or how easy it's going to be to find them, or how hard it is? Can you
I
give me an
confess
answer?
to you, I stopped in December. Once we got to our meeting in February, I turned my attentions to readdressing. I know that Mr. Jackson and I have spent an exemplary amount of time redeveloping our proposal that we gave to you guys in the early part of February, and I stopped energizing the collection after Zach left, whether or not the staffing is out there to bring onto the board or not. So I really can't tell you personally what's out there. You have to understand, 2 other things would have eliminated my connections. I am on the board of one of the continued education programs called Symboya. I sat on that. I'm there as a consultant to their education curriculum and their webmastering. But because of the virus that arrived, they have not been meeting. They've only met by Zoom for class structure twice. And so those gentlemen and those people on those classes, I haven't had any contact when I would have normally had contact every month all the way since January. Since the virus, we have been offline as well.
I have a question, if I may.
Well, hold on. Councilman Parkins, were you all set?
Yeah, I guess.
Okay. Councilman Higgins, go ahead.
Okay, my question is for Mr. Myers. For a while, you've been telling us about a book you've been writing that will put everything together. And you said part of the problem with putting the book together was McKenna and getting them to go along and following with the instructions. Would you say that that has been taken care of? That or give me your update on that.
I would say the month and a half before the virus hit in our city and the state, John Jackson and myself wrestled with this on a weekly basis for 3 to 5 weeks, and we were in lockstep agreement that what we proposed to the council in February in that study session is what we would agree to work towards in this city's building department. And so I think at that point we were in the right direction. The piece that was in a Matt Conkler structure, which we haven't completed, wouldn't have been in the quality control package or a checklist that I was creating for inspectors as we move forward, as an accountability of consistency and predictability. That piece was independent, but in McKenna's second contract piece, they had a CDBG project which they completed, and the other one was to write a daily operations procedures manual. And that piece has not been completed, nor have we paid them for that, and we've just stopped that process as I realized we began to make those conversations and plans. And not that we hadn't had them for about a year with Matt Koffler in the room. They just never got completed. John Jackson has made adjustments in his regional directors in line in lieu of those limitations that McKenna has done. But we did not finish that procedures manual. That would be a living document that allows everybody in the building department to know what is used, when it's used, and how it's processed, so that if a council member wanted to look into our system to find out if we followed the same protocol for everybody that came through the door, they would be able to see that because we would have a procedures manual. And due to history, I have asked a number of people, including the clerk's office, and we do not have record of when we misplaced in the city of Lincoln Park the procedures operational manual that we once did have. So we've been in the process of choosing to create a new one, and that piece has not been completed. There is a preliminary document in front, but not necessarily active to the day-to-day routines.
Can you tell me, has McKenna been cooperative through this or non-cooperative through this?
I would say that John Jackson has been more than cooperative, and I think John can speak even maybe a little more clearly. At sometimes his staff has been more reluctant to finish it, and they would give him reasons or justifications, but I would say that some of their staff, administrative staff, would not feel they have the resources or time to finish the details of that day-to-day process.
Thank you.
Whoops, I'm gone here.
I see your picture.
You see?
We hear you.
All right. For some reason, I lost the screen. Oh, there we go. Don't touch the computer. Okay. Yes, sir. Councilman.
John Myers, please.
Yes, sir.
John?
Yes.
So you're saying if it was in-house, then we could write the book ourselves and we wouldn't need McKenna to continue on their novel?
I recommend it gets written one way or the other. It has to be done for the benefit of accountability for the long-term development of the city. It is a procedures and operation manual of a day-to-day process. And whatever would happen to the city, I think part of the value to accountability above my position needs to know that there is a manual of how things should have been done, how things are being done, and how things will be done for James's position and anybody around that level to be able to evaluate by a performance of day-to-day operations. I do believe it's important. Sometimes it's not quite as important as making customer service in compliance when we get very busy. You need to understand, again, for the last year and a half, we don't have major contracts that are giving us $15,000, $20,000, $30,000 permits. Most of our permits would come on a percentage of about $115 a permit, and yet we can produce 1.2 in the last 2 years, about $1.2 million revenue in the city. That means a lot of small pockets of money coming and being managed piece by piece, and so sometimes it gets hard under a structure of consultant to get it done. That's why we went with Matt Koppler's request to McKenna to take a contract over and above a day-to-day operations to help write this program.
Okay, did not you tell us that McKenna did turn a book over to you? It wasn't acceptable and you started rewriting it again?
No, I did say it wasn't acceptable the way it was written, and I have not finished it, and I haven't completed it in this last 6 to 8 months that we've been through this journey.
John, I'm not a writer, but I could sure write a novel in that time.
Yep, I guess I can credit myself for failing to complete that book in this period of time. That's,
So if it was in-house, we could write it and not have McKenna worry about, so we could do it ourselves. Is that not correct?
we can do it ourselves. I'm just saying, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Anything further?
Your Honor,
Yes, sir, go ahead.
last one, a comment and then a question, and then, we've been beating a dead horse, as I heard earlier. Like I said, I've been on council almost 2 years. I've been here about an in-house department, building department in-house for 2 years. I've been hearing all the stories. What can Mr. Jackson assure the residents of Lincoln Park and council that we're gonna see an improvement in the next 6 months? Mr. Jackson?
Do you have a comment for that, Mr. Jackson? I think he's muted, so James, if you take, there we go.
Yeah, I am, going to assure the city council and the residents of Lincoln Park that we are going to continue to make progress on improving the building department delivery of service. The building department is a complex operation. And while the first order of business is safety for the residents of Lincoln Park, sometimes that means delivering bad news, right? News that people don't want to hear about their rental property, news they don't want to hear about their commercial property, about their CO. It's delivering bad news. But number one, first and foremost, is the safety of the residents of Lincoln Park and the businesses of Lincoln Park. Secondly, it's about property values in Lincoln Park. The residential units that you have in Lincoln Park are your primary tax base. We want to make sure through the rental program that we're making progress on getting rental units identified and improved. So we're allocating our resources to those efforts. Obviously, customer service is a priority of ours. We want to make sure that people, when they come to the counter, they get answers. Again, they might not like the answers, but they'll get answers, and we'll follow up in a timely manner. Those are the trademarks of good customer service. We can't always tell people good news. So you are going to get people that leave there irritated. It's costing them more money to invest. So that's just part of the nature of a building department. But we will work through that and explain to people why we need to do that and why things are the case. So all I can commit to you is to continue to grind and work hard towards this vision of a building department that the city has that covers all the bases. The rental, the building, the code enforcement. We're looking at providing the resources for you. And it's not just a matter of finding people that are certified. Okay, we've had certified people that have worked in Lincoln Park but have not been a good fit. So we've had to find other people that fit into the team atmosphere that John's trying to create. So it's more than just finding people that are licensed by the state of Michigan. It's finding people that have the right personality, the right disposition to serve in that high-stress environment. So my commitment to the city of Lincoln Park is that we're going to continue to build that team with John so that you have a building department that you can be proud of. That's our objective.
Thank you.
All right, further from council?
I'd just like to make a final, I don't know, Your Honor, why there isn't an end date in the contract and why there's no penalties in there. I mean, I don't understand it at all. I mean, any contract I've ever seen, it doesn't have an open-ended contract. I mean, I don't know why the council approved it, and I don't know why it was written that way. And I would say that the attorney should start looking at some of these contracts, Your Honor, that we make sure that there are safeguards in there for the city. Because quite frankly, unless there's penalties for the contractor or the vendor, there's no push from the city because you have no push. There's nothing there to push other than a good word. That's all, Your Honor. Thank you.
I believe that why we are at a point where there was not an end date for the contract is that we were working towards going towards in-house operations of the building department in some capacity, even more, and then to continue that operation until it did. I'm just going to take a moment here because we have time to read over the minutes from the study session from February 18th. And in that, it was building department operations, and where John Myers outlined the reorganization of the building department, personnel needed to effectively operate the department in-house. Ideally, this should include a deputy building official, an administrative supervisor to help coordinate inspections and clerical operations respectively. These two positions could be expected to perform inspections or clerical work along with supervisory tasks. 3 inspectors should be full-time employees to do residential and commercial construction inspections, as well as rental and exterior resale inspections and other code enforcement inspections. 3 permit techs will be needed to do clerical work on rentals, permits, plan review, planning and zoning applications, and commission meetings and minutes. 3 trade inspectors should be contracted and paid a percentage of permits. A cost comparison between what it costs for outsourcing and in-house was presented by finance, and projections show an increase of approximately $10,000 to bring services back in-house. This includes personnel benefits as well as vehicles and other equipment not currently available to this department. And it left it with that we were going to have another study session in order to discuss this. So the plans were in place to work towards the goal of going to in-house. And then we had the COVID hit, which was quite a deal. Now, it's something that is not an excuse. It's actually a reality. A lot of things got shut down. But I believe that we are still in the process of moving all of this towards being in-house. But we don't want to put this in a position where we're going to jeopardize new businesses or as businesses reopening and construction that's going to be coming in by not having the resources available to help them at the time that they need these things. I agree that going to as an in-house is ultimately going to be the right thing for us to do, but I don't think that we are there yet. We want to do what's best for our citizens. For if they need to get a permit for electrical work, they need to be able to have that within a timely fashion and have it done in the right way. And as I'm going to quote Mr. Jackson, that we have to do what is safe for everyone. We don't want a future business or possibly a hotel or something to be built and have it not being able to be inspected properly or by people that aren't trained the right way. So what I'm saying here is that in the city manager working out and saying that it's a 6-month extension, that is not going to be a bad thing for us. All I want to do is make sure that we get this thing right and do it right, because we're going to have to live with it for a while. So that's my tirade. Does anybody else wish to be heard? We still have a good half hour left, time left for the meeting.
Your Honor.
Yes, sir, go ahead.
Once again, bring up my suggestion. If we're going to go towards bringing it in-house, which I think is what we need to do, the idea of starting to bring in-house and bring in some people now, some people later, so that we're not doing it all at the same time, makes even more sense to me. And I think that's something we need to think about, and just throw that suggestion out there. Start with the clerks, then work our way up. I think it makes more sense to me, even more as I think it out. That's all.
As a hybrid, that may be a good idea, sir. Anyone else wish to be heard on building department operations?
Good Chair?
Yes, sir, go ahead.
Mike, I think if you do it that way, McKenna's still going to be taking the majority of the money. It's going to be costing us more money because we're going to be paying them and then getting rid of people and putting our own people in place. So I think we'll just have to bring them over and do it now and just quit paying McKenna all the way around. It'll bring my money back into town. Thank you.
Okay, is there further discussion in regards to building department operations? Okay,
I will just say, if I may.
yes, go ahead.
I agree with you, Mayor. I think we need to work towards bringing it in-house, but I do think that we need to look at this thoroughly and figure out exactly what is in the best interest of the citizens and all of the public, and keep them safe. And I think a 6-month review would be in our best interest, and that's my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there anyone else wishing to be heard?
Through the chair,
Yes, sir.
Donna, in 6 months, it's gonna be prime building season. Then you're gonna do away with it then, and it's impossible to do it then because you don't have the people. If you do it now, you got all winter to get the people in here and rebuild the departments. Thank you very much. Bye.
Okay, further discussion?
I just, through the chair, if I could, to the
Yes.
city manager and to Mr. Jackson, I just want to know how can you make a commitment when we don't know, and how are you going to bring it back to council without council doing the same thing we've always done, is writing emails asking what happened to this, what happened to that. In other words, are you going to keep on top of this? Because the history has shown it hasn't, okay? That's my question. You're asking, I'll speak for myself, you're asking me to take a leap of faith, and you're telling me that this is the best idea, the figures and all that stuff, and I told you this story before that I've gone through, and you're telling me in 6 months, we'd like to reevaluate this, and you'd like to have the council, all the council, if possible, to vote on this, because that's your game plan. My comment to you is, you can't guarantee the future, but I tell you what, the guarantees I have been getting don't seem to come back to fruition that way, okay? And that's before you came there. And again, you work with a team of people that have a lot of stuff to do. I mean, they're asked to do a lot of stuff for the city, and sometimes maybe it's too much stuff for the city. I mean, there's so much that we put on people that things get kind of like, if you want to call them, the back burner. So I'm asking you, as a current city manager, what are you going to do to assure me and Mr. Meyer and Mr. Jackson, because they're all part, that this project actually is going to come up in 6 months, whoever is in office, and actually be addressed at that time with documentation and facts and figures to decide and continue to go forward with this?
Well, first of all, I just put a calendar reminder into my calendar for 5 months from now to do a good evaluation. I do believe Mr. Myers, Mr. Jackson, and Bruce Eck have weekly, bi-weekly building department meetings that I'm going to trying to get, maybe not each and every one of them, but at least monthly get involved. And outside of that, I actually try and sit down or Zoom with Mr. Jackson to see where we can improve what we can do.
Okay, 'cause you know where I'm coming from.
Mr. Grzan, I would suggest that beginning of the month updates as we move through this on what the progress is. As the first meeting of the month, I think would be a good time for that, if that would be possible, and that's something that you'd be agreeable to?
Sure.
Okay, I'm sorry, Mr. Kelsey, go ahead.
Oh, no, you're fine, Your Honor. I like that idea. It's a good idea.
And if I may, again,
Yes.
through the chair, I have a suggestion. I think in the meantime, we need to create an eligibility list for the clerical positions that we're talking about filling. At least that will give us a heads up. We'll have a list out there. Testing will be done, and then we'll know where we need to go with those employees on the clerical staff.
That's a good suggestion also. All right. Yes, sir, go ahead.
I think John Myers should put some feelers out about inspectors to see what's out there. Thank you.
All righty. There further discussion here? All right, hearing none, then having all the business, there being no further business for the study session, we will be adjourning at 7:01.
And again, I'm sorry, I was